Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tech Leaders Unplugged. And joining me today is my fellow teammate and co-host, Wade Erickson. Hi, Wade. Good morning. Thank you for being
Hi,
here.
nice to meet everybody out there.
Thank you so much. And of course, we have our guest today is Siddharth Shah, and he is with Canoo. And we are going to be talking about he's the VP, the Vice President of Engineering at Canoo, and we're going to be talking about charging forward, the road ahead for electric vehicle charging. Look forward to this conversation today. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting one. So first of all, Sid, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the show. Let's start with you, Shah. Introduce yourself, please. Whatever you want to say about yourself, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and then, of course, tell us about Canoo. Thank you.
Hi, Collis. Thanks for the introduction. So my name is Siddharth. I'm currently the VP of Engineering, focusing on the software side at Canoo. I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I've covered different kind of EVs. I've been also in the oil and gas industry early on in my career. So it's been a transition from, let's say, the oil and gas industry all the way to like clean energy at this point. As far as Canoo is a pre-revenue company on the stock market. We've introduced a range of vehicles that you can find on our website. We are heavily focused in fleets. We're also working as far as recently, we've actually gave our first CTVs to NASA, right? So we're working with, and so we have a few other contracts with the DOE and the DOD. So those are publicly available to find out about. So Canoo is the interesting part about Canoo is we started off as we built a platform which has a steer-by-wire system. So it's really flat, low, right? And you can put a lot of different top hats on top of it to actually change the configuration of the vehicle, which works very well as we kind of like move forward and EV adoption is growing to make custom built design vehicles fit the particular use case that you really want to. So that's the intent of where Canoo is trying to take the EVs, trying to make EVs for everyone, trying to make it more available to the general public. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for elaborating about Canoo and about your background, Sid. So I understand that we're also going to be talking about exploring the infrastructure and technology innovations needed to charge up the electric vehicle revolutions, right?
Right.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about why you feel this is the way that this is the direction that the space is going.
So for me, I think that's been the biggest hurdle, right? Up till now, I think even though EV adoption has increased, and I think Tesla has a big hand to play in that, right? And has really, forefronted the industry. I think as we move into the next stage of the adoption, I think charging is one of the biggest aspects that needs a solution in the short run to actually appease range anxiety in folks, to ensure that we're putting the right infrastructure in place such that we can work with the grid to ensure that when every home has a EV, how to best utilize the entire infrastructure around us in order to ensure that the adoption continues to expand at the rate that it's been expanding over the past few years, and get more people onto the bandwagon of like trying to get an EV in their house, so that we can have a much better future in the EV industry.
Thank you so much, Wade.
As we envision, like you said, the houses are going to start having an EV in every garage, right? Do you see that? And then, of course, the impact on the grid, because it's going to be, the hit is when everybody gets home from work, those that are not remote workers. And do you see maybe some other battery-driven solutions that maybe are charging the battery set during the day, so that when you actually plug in, or maybe even some smaller solar systems, solar-based panels, so that you're not necessarily charging the whole house with it, but it's really focused just for the vehicles. Tell me a little bit about the technology on kind of a distributed micro site charging that you kind of see for the future.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? There's a range of solutions out there that will help in this adoption, right? So obviously, as most people charge at home, it's always level 2 charging. It's slow, it's overnight, right? Uh, that's that's the best use case as of today, right? So you come in, you plug your level 2 charger. As we go into the aspect of greater adoption of like V2G technology, so vehicle to grid technology, right? Vehicle to home technology, I think there's certainly advantages of then powering your house via the EV, right? Having an extra battery resource in your house, right? So solar panels, now that we've moved towards a, uh, with more clean energy being adopted and everyone having solar panels on top of their houses, right? It acts as an additional resource to actually capture energy, right? The excess energy doesn't need to be sent back to the grid. You can capture it within your car. You can power your home from it. So there's certainly use cases on that side. At the same time, it keeps your battery healthy because you're using you're doing level 2 charging. You're not like fast charging. You're allowing the battery management system to do a better job at like managing how charge and discharge cycles take place. So it's really important to uh, take all those into consideration and have the right infrastructure. So there's also workplace charging. So while you mentioned most of the people who don't work from home actually take their cars out, right? So certainly companies like us promote workplace charging because we are an EV company. But as general adoption increases, you'll see much of this in other places where while you're at work, you have your car connected. Obviously, it's a secondary source of income too if you're giving back to the grid, right? Um, but it also helps the to actually charge it at work too. So the number of battery packs that are increasing, there's a lot of energy storage devices that'll be all over the place, and the best utilization of it comes from that. I think the overall, I think just vehicle to home, vehicle to grid technology is will pave the way to actually ensuring that we have a balanced grid. We balance the grid versus charging all across in the regions that are going to get great adoption, right, in the EV side. So
Great. So I know in your background you did a lot of work with the autonomous vehicle space. Tell me a little bit about how, and most of the vehicles, EV vehicles, are trying to get that in place. Tell me a little bit about your work with autonomous vehicle and some of the challenges you found, in particularly in putting that cars in general.
yeah, so autonomous vehicles or even assisted driving. So I like to call it like a sleuth of different, like from going from like what's now commonplace, which is like blind spot monitoring, all the way to like ACC, LCC, right? So you're lane centering, and then to going to a point where you don't have a driver in the car. So there's levels, right? And as we move forward, software becomes extremely complex as you go up the level 2, level 4, level 5, right? Those kind of up the autonomy stack. I think it's the specific nature of autonomous and assisted driving is as you go up the stack, the safety kind of starts becoming a much more imperative thing, right? You also have to have redundancy, right, in the system. So it starts from the hardware. As let's we talk about like some of the autonomous systems, it starts from the hardware where it's fully redundant hardware, right, that can fall back if something goes wrong. And then even in software, obviously there's specs like ISO 26262, which is like the functional safety aspect of every function, right, that you're actually performing. For instance, if you're doing lane centering, you're doing adaptive cruise control, what are your backup systems, right? What's the monitoring systems, right? And this goes across the V cycle that they call in automotive, from the time you do feature definition all the way to like implementation, going through testing, and then feature validation. So it becomes even more important in the autonomous side, like it is in like, let's say, powertrain development and some of the BMS development. So
Great. Now I know you had a press release here in July around NASA. Can you talk? And you brought that up a little bit in the beginning. Tell me a little bit about that NASA work and some of the important crew that you'll be carrying with that vehicle.
Yeah, so it's an awesome experience to work with the Artemis team. We won the contract to actually transport the astronauts from the base to the actual rocket, right? We've done a lot of customizations for them in the car, right, to actually accommodate their requests, but also to just work with them and actually see the vehicle to go from like deliver a vehicle to them that meets the standards that they require, right? So it's been a great experience working with the NASA team as we've gone through the process of building these vehicles, customizing them, going to requests. Um, the uh, the team has been. I mean, the Canoo team is a fantastic set of engineers, and they've gone above and beyond in like trying to make this a vehicle that'll be well suited for this use case, as well as has all the general aspects of what an EV takes to build from scratch. Right? So this is a culmination of about 4.5 years of work for me to actually deliver something that'll be used, which is an amazing experience in general. So, yeah.
Great, great. And then, so the company's fairly young, 2017, right? Is from what I understand. Tell me a little bit about that growth trajectory. You guys started in California, if I'm correct, right?
Right.
And then you're in quite a few other states. Tell me a little bit about some of the growth and entrepreneurial aspects that the company's gone through.
Right. So we started in California in 2017. I joined about about 8 or 9 months later. Right. It was a young startup. I mean, but when I joined, there were 4 models. Right. We had no controllers, a very few set of software engineers. So it's been great at building that team from 2 or 3 software engineers to about 100 plus now. Right. In with the different departments. Uh, Focus has changed as we go too. So as we grew through this phases, we first were doing extremely in powertrain development, right? So a lot of powertrain development, battery management, charging, a little bit of body controls, powertrain gateway, and that kind of stuff. And then it's going to be shifted a little bit more towards okay, those are reaching some form of maturity. Now we focus on connected vehicle and infotainment space, where now we have an infotainment controller in the car. There's a screen. There's also connectivity to the cloud. A lot of the OTA and remote commands and remote diagnostics aspects have been brought in. We've done a lot of that infrastructure in house, and then beyond that, to actually move to getting a lot of the assisted driving aspects of it, so the level 2 aspects of the vehicle. Um, so it's been a journey trying to come from nothing but a blank sheet of paper, no code on our Bitbucket repos, to now having this massive set that we've kind of built out over 4.5 years, and it's been an amazing experience building the team out. So
Great. Carlos?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Wade. Yeah. We're talking about. I have a question actually for Sid, and of course we're talking about what's ahead on the electric vehicle revolution, right? So, but it's exciting. There's a lot of innovation going on. There's a lot of excitement about the industry itself. But at the end of the day, we're still talking about some form of energy, right? So we're moving from fossil fuel to electric vehicles. So my question to you is, what do you think are that? Let me put it this way: how, for example, other sources of energy like solar, wind, renewables, how can they contribute to a cleaner and more sustainable energy ecosystem and address concerns about a potential strain on the electrical grid?
right. So imagine I just try to put a scenario out, right? So you come back home in your EV, you walk into your house, which has solar panels on top on the roof, right?
Uh-huh.
You have possibly a battery pack behind. You may not need that battery pack if you have your EV to give you the off peak, bring down the off peak energy by your home connected EV that powers your home. right? And all this is done using some form of clean energy, like taking wind energy converted that you're actually getting in from the whenever as required from the grid,
Mhm.
right? A lot of the aspects of these are that you're creating a self-sufficient ecosystem within everyone's house, right? Which is trying to do best energy management within a house where you're actually powering your EV, you're powering your EV batteries are huge for powering a home, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we are talking about 80 kilowatt hour, 66 kilowatt hour, even in the lower end, right? So most solar companies will not put anywhere around that size for you in your house, because you don't need to store that much energy, because you're not going to burn through that to power just your house. So I think the entire ecosystem, when put together, creates a much more greener kind of like you're contributing a lot personally to the green space by having that full ecosystem built out for yourself. And just, I mean, that's what we're striving for, right? Trying to reduce the effects of climate change. And I think
Mhm.
every person doing this would be an amazing thing, and it'll actually really really speed up our goals to hit, for ensuring that we reduce the effects of climate change, which are already being seen right across the world. So
Okay, great. So one more is something else that I was thinking is, so what sort of collaboration efforts are needed between, for example, governments, the private sector, and utilities companies to establish a widespread charging infrastructure that caters to urban and rural areas alike?
yeah, that's an important question. So I think we are quite nascent in terms of collaborating with each other. There's a lot of isolated components built out, right? A lot of this working seamlessly has been a challenge in itself, right? There are obviously organizations like ISO that have put up specs, right, which help in like how you communicate between a charger and the network. Uh, so ISO 15118, for instance, is a good spec that is going through. It's been there for quite a few years, but is now picking traction, right? As we go into plug and charge, for instance, right, where you plug into the DC fast charging network and you don't have to swipe your credit card, for instance, right? So that's one of things where you're integrating with the grid, where you have a common ecosystem of keeping certificates in the cloud, where you can then you have a root of trust which you can trust, so that you can charge the right user, so that you have no there's all this existing network of charge providers, right? There's the digital wallet side of it, which is I think they call the EMSPs, right? The ones that charge you for the money, and then there's the EV itself that's holding the certificates that are required to ensure that they're charging the right people, right, when you're going outside. So there has been that collaboration started as we kind of like move to get the charge provider working with the EV, right, folks, so that you have this synergy in there where you're kind of like ensuring that the right person is charging, the right rates are being charged, uh, right rates are being negotiated between the different parties, right? So it's moving in the right direction. Obviously, it's not going at the pace that the rest of the industry is going, as we are adopting EVs very quickly, right? But there's certainly a path to actually getting much better collaboration between charge providers, charge networks, the grid, and a lot of the things that are done recently with on the solar side are also kind of helping out, right? Where we are promoting a lot of the solar side. Obviously the infrastructure bill by the recent government has helped a lot too in promoting these things.
Thank you so much, Sid. Wade, back to you. Do you have more
Yeah,
questions?
you said you're pre-revenue. Tell me a little bit about expectations of when we might see some of these out on the road.
And there are already a bunch on the road as of right now.
Okay.
Uh, Obviously, we finished our low volume build last year, and we're about to start our high volume build this year, right? So you'll see a lot of them. We have existing contracts with Walmart, Zigbee, with Kingbee and Ziba, right? So you'll see a lot more in coming years, starting from this year.
Where's your primary build factories?
It's in
California or in
no the it's in OKC, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma? Okay. All right. Also, I saw you're doing work with the DoD. Is that for vehicles or is that in your battery technology? Tell me a little bit about your DoD, because I know the DoD is headed for EVs in a big way, which is kind of surprising given, the history of how warfare is handled and the need for fuel. But tell me a little bit about your work with the DoD.
I mean publicly the information that's available. We made a LTV for them, a light terrain vehicle. That they are going through testing with that. Uh, Actually, for the DoD as well as for a lot of these defense organizations, EVs is an interesting use case. It's a portable battery pack, right? It can be taken into the field. So I think there's some very unique use cases for the defense that are not generally seen as a obvious use case, right? But for sure, if you can, you can power the same thing. You can power any site at any point of time, right? So there's certainly very unique use cases, which I'm pretty sure are the ones that are exciting the DoD while they work for us. So as of right now, we've built a very purpose-built vehicle for them. It's with them, and they're using it, and hoping for more collaboration with them in the future. So
Great. So if you don't mind, a lot of our viewers are in the software space. If we could pivot a little bit to some of your experience about just in general software development. I've seen in your background you've built a lot of teams from scratch and bringing them from different companies and pulling them together to become productive fast. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the best practices you could share on what you've experienced in building teams that are developers and testers, and maybe even if you're using offshoring, how have you used offshore teams to blend those at all, if you've done that?
right, so we've done that. So when I try to build teams, obviously, I always say they're like, there's the 1x engineer, 10x engineer, and the 100x engineer, right? So you're looking for those 10x and 100x engineers to build the foundation of your teams, right? So a lot of this is because they're the ones that can put good practices in place, build teams around them, right? So we've been lucky to have a bunch of them at Canoo, and throughout my career, right, I've worked with a bunch of them. As far as practices go, the automotive industry is pretty strict in the way that we kind of have to put some process in place, right? It's called organized chaos in my mind, right? You have to organize your chaos when you're a startup. While you're trying to build fast, you want to build on the right footing, right? So everything from having the right requirements management tools to actually ensuring that the developers are very clear about what their sprint goals are, running really efficient 2-week sprints, right? Where you're going into the details prior to the sprint and ensuring everyone's clear and aligned, and then ensuring at the end to actually see what went wrong and what went right. Apart from that, ensuring that you have all the build tools in place, right? So everything from, let's say, your put it in some kind of source control to having CI/CD platforms, right? Having nightly build systems, having things to go, things in a loop, right? Where we are actually testing repeatedly, and then doing very, very focused hardware and loop testing, software and loop testing, then going into like the ECU testing, hill testing, and then going to subsystem testing, system testing. So you kind of have to go through all those. That's what I feel. If you have that in place, then you make less mistakes, and this becomes a well-oiled machine, right?
Great. Thanks for that. All right, I think we're coming up on the end, Carlos. I'll let you kind of wrap up.
Thank you, Wade. I appreciate it. Yes, first of all, before we go, thanks again, Sid, for having joined us today. And I just need to make a quick announcement of what's coming. This is our guest tomorrow. We're going to be speaking with Roy Gonzarski, I hope I pronounced it correctly, the CEO of Alithion. And the topic is going to be how optical AI slays counterfeits and gray markets, unmasking the shadows. Talk about an intriguing and cryptic, an interesting title for a conversation. So that's what we're going to be having tomorrow right here on Tech Leaders Unplugged. at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So join us tomorrow right here. And again, thank you, Sid. Thank you, Wade. And see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sid. We'll see you.
Thanks
Rob.
for inviting me. Thanks.
Have a good.
Bye.